Welcome to the Hollywood Raw YouTube page, guys. We're happy to have you here. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us comments, do all the stuff.
What are you waiting for? Let's go. I got a drug addiction to feed.
Welcome to the Hollywood Raw podcast. I'm Adam Glyn. On the other side of the country is Dax Holt. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Can't complain.
Oh, summer is over, but is it really over? I mean, how's it for you guys in the West Coast? Is it end at Labor Day, or is it continuous summer for you guys?
No, it'll stay nice for a while. I think into October, it's still pretty warm over here. It doesn't really get that cold. I mean, honestly, as crazy as that sounds.
That's got to be nice, man. I mean, everyone is already they're pumping out pumpkin stuff, everything. I'm I try to stretch the summer out for as long as possible. I still go to the beach. I try to milk it for as long as possible because the winter is just too damn long.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't blame you, but that's also why we pay ridiculously high property taxes, because you get sunshine year round here.
Yeah, I know that. So property tax in California is terrible, huh?
Well, the cost of living in California is terrible. That's true. Because it's just so nice. Everyone wants to live here.
You know, Mark Wahlberg, shout out to him, the hat. Mark Wahlberg moved to Vegas recently, and he's trying to push Sony Studios out to Nevada. So if Sony moves out to Nevada, that would create a lot of, people would have to relocate their life. However, you potentially might, it'd be weird, but you could maybe save some money, obviously, but you maybe be able to pay a few people less because the cost of living. I don't know.
Well,
what would happen.
you could pay people the same and then save a ton of money on production, because in Vegas, a lot of the casinos are paying the taxes for everyone else. That is the whole purpose of them being in there. So the cost of living is less. So if you literally just pay people the same, the money would go a lot further in Vegas than it would here.
It's got to be nice. I mean, just life is just getting so expensive. I never eat fast food. I rarely ever eat fast food. Taco Bell's even expensive now.
I thought the same thing the other day. We love Taco Bell. We're always going, and it's just now what used to be $5 to feed a whole family is now like 40. And you're like, what the hell? Yeah. Why did it get so expensive to eat at Taco Bell?
Taco Bell, it's so expensive now. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it got so expensive, but it's just the cost. And the thing is, I feel like everything else hasn't got I feel like pay hasn't gotten better in show business. However, the cost of living has gone up.
Yeah. Did you see that Mark Wahlberg, by the way, just sold his huge mansion out here?
You know what? I want to meet the guy who actually bought it. That mansion is insane. I mean, he's got a golf hole at his home.
He's got the golf course. He's got a full basketball court. He's got the gym. He's got this insane pool with different water slides and fountains. And it's one of the craziest houses I've ever seen in LA. He sold it for $55 million. It's 30,000 square feet. But I have driven right past that house because it's up in Beverly Park, which is this gated community. And I had to go in there because I had a meeting with this really, really wealthy dude once. And he lived, within, I don't know, a minute of Mark's house. And I remember driving and oh shit, there's Mark's house. I've seen this, I've reported it, I put pictures up on websites about Mark's house. And I remember just driving past it, looking at the huge gates, being oh damn, it's right behind there.
Yeah, so you can actually see the house when you drive by it, or is it behind gates?
You just see the gates, but the gates themselves are ridiculously impressive because the walls are so high, the gates are so just enormous. You know there's a massive house behind it.
Isn't it cool when you drive by a place which is from sort of a staple? I remember going in Beverly Hills and seeing the Fresh Prince house. Whoa, that's the Fresh Prince house. Or going by the Osbournes. I was wait, this is the Osbournes house. So I just every time I'm in LA and stuff like that stumbles upon me, I'm it kind of gets surreal. It becomes more real.
There's a couple houses that I always take people to when they come to California, and I'm okay, let me just tour you around, friends from out of the state or friends from out of the country or whatever, and they want to see LA. So I will take them to the Osbourne house because it's a house where they would shoot the exterior, but you can actually see the exterior. There's obviously a wall, but the road kind of goes up a little bit, so you can see there's the house, there's the wall, there's everything. So that one's a cool one to show them.
Wait, Dex, before you get into that, that house, it's right off the strip, right?
Yeah.
It's not far off the strip.
It's like 2 seconds away from Boa.
Okay, good.
You just have to know where to drive, and you'll be there super fast. So that is one place. I will normally show them the house where Michael Jackson died, because it was just all over the news. It was covered, so that's another spot. The Playboy Mansion, because it's just, historic, iconic. Playboy, so you can't really see much. You kind of pull up and you're like, oh, the Playboy Mansion's behind this wall, I promise. So that's one. Aaron Spelling's mansion, because it was one of the most expensive homes in LA for a very, very long time. It's got so much history there. And then Ellen DeGeneres, she had a house that was right next to the Playboy Mansion that she flipped and made all look nice. So I'll point that one out. Paula Abdul had a house right there. And then what else will I show people? Those are kind of the main ones. Simon Cowell's house, because his is over kind of by Rodeo Drive. But again, it's one of those ones that you can actually see. It's not hidden away. And Simon Cowell's an international star, so kind of everyone always knows where he's at or who he is. So those are the houses I normally show.
You know what's so crazy, though? You can have Paula Abdul living next to, I don't know, Tori Spelling. Mm-hmm. And they could live next to each other for 15 years, and then they never talk to each other. They just never... California, just real estate's just different. It's not like neighborhoody.
Well, I think that's in one of those neighborhoods. Like they're not out walking their dog around the neighborhood. What's different though is, okay, so if you're in Beverly Hills, kind of like Tom Cruise or whatever, Paul Abdul, Simon, they're not walking out their gates and walking around, because people will notice them. It's not easy. In Calabasas, where the Kardashians live, yes, Hidden Hills, those people all do go out, walk their dogs, go in their golf carts to go around the place. So you see a lot of those celebs out, because everyone who's in there is either filthy rich or a celebrity.
And I guess they all go to the same grocery store. They go to the same restaurants in the neighborhood. So, what was just in LA? And Dax, I think you've probably covered this a lot over the past, was the Malibu Chili Cook-Off.
Yep.
And a lot of celebrities go to that. Am I right?
Oh, tons. If you want to see celebs, go to the cook-off. You will see everyone goes there, from Pink, and that's all you won't get. The Kardashians will go. Yeah. Sandler will go. It's a staple out there.
Have you been to it?
No. Because I'm not driving all the way up there to see some famous people. I just don't care that much.
Go all the way up there for chili, and then you have that long ride home with chili in your stomach, and who knows when it's going to pull off pull from the side of the road. You're like, oh man, that chili.
Exactly.
But on today's podcast, we are going to cover something that me and you were kind of just talking about: stories we didn't believe. Sort of like famous, whatever you want to call it, stories that just shocked us. When you heard the story, you were just blown away by it. I think some of these stories, you didn't even know there was a clue that they were going to break. Would you say?
I would say that, but when I think about these stories, I'm like, when I first heard it, I was like, there's no way. This has to be just a dumb rumor out there. Well, with the exception of one, because I was a part of breaking one of them. But actually, now I'm looking through them. I was part of breaking a couple. But when you first hear it, you're just like, that can't be true. It's so salacious or so weird or out of context for that celebrity that you don't believe it. And then as the details start coming out, you're like, holy shit, this is real? This person actually did this? Are they insane? I think those are the stories that I wanted to talk about today, because a lot of people over the course of my career, when you meet someone that is either they love TMZ or they're just fascinated about celebrity news, one thing they're like, what is the craziest story you've ever covered? Well, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the craziest story that I've ever covered, but times 10. And just talk about all of them.
Before we get into these stories, when you guys show some love, when you guys leave a review, we actually read your review live on air. Some of you guys like to hear your name on the air, and so that's giving you a little bit of shouting you out. It's fun to hear your name and your review on the podcast. It's the best thing to do to support us. Dax, do you have a review ready for us?
Yes, I do. All right. This one comes from Lindy Fly. Says, fun show. Found you through Juicy Scoop. Really enjoy. I will say the publicist interview was cringe, but not your fault. She's just not a good interviewee. I probably.
I get it.
Oops. I can't see these before I read them out loud. Okay,
Listen,
clearly not a fan of Lizzie Grubman, but Lizzie Grubman was such an iconic person in just the Hollywood game for so long that it was actually really exciting to get her on the podcast for us personally.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not mad at her. I thought it was going to go different direction. However, she is a legendary publicist who was as infamous and famous. Again, I say that whatever you want to say, but I appreciate the review, guys. Keep the reviews coming in. If you say 5 stars, 2 kind words, we'll actually read your review live on air. Just go on your Apple iPhone, put in the podcast app, put in Hollywood World Podcast, go all the way to the bottom, say a few kind words, 5 stars, or we give you a shout out. That easy, that quick. The best thing to do to support this podcast. Now, Dax, let's talk about a story we didn't believe when we first heard it.
Okay.
What's the first one that comes to mind when we talk about this topic? What's that story that just shocked you and put you, that really just blew you away? You didn't see coming.
Well, there's one that immediately comes to mind, but I'm not going to say that one yet. I think the story that I really was blown away by was Tiger Woods, was the scandal, was the perfect golfer image shattered within a month, and how he was the biggest athlete on the entire planet. He had this squeaky clean image that you didn't think could be tarnished, and then it all fell apart so fast. And I think when I first heard the rumors of him cheating, I think it was National Enquirer that broke the first story.
Yeah, there was some.
Unfortunately, that my mind just went to, oh, it's not true. This is just some bull crap that National Enquirer is spitting out. And in National Enquirer's defense, even though they don't have the best reputation, they've broken a ton of stories over the years, huge, massive stories. But because they've also had weird, alien kind of stories, people tend not to believe them. But this story evolved very quickly. But I'm telling you, the first time I heard it, I was like, there's no way this is true.
Yes, I think it's because golf is such a clean-cut sport. And when you hear about an incident going on at 2:30 in the morning, especially at Tiger Woods' house, where he drove his Escalade into the bushes and shrubs of his neighbor, crashing into a fire hydrant. I mean, it was such a scene. So when you have such a wild scene come out of golf, I think that was just shocking. And then when you have Tiger Woods, who is one of the biggest athletes in the world, and everything that went along with it, it was crazy. I mean, this story for me was it's a very hard story for me because it was the start of my, I guess, raising red flags at a company I was working at. And the company, they showed their true colors with this. And it basically put me, it's a difficult story to discuss because what it made me go through. So one of Tiger Woods' neighbors is a friend of mine, or is a friend of mine, or one of his old neighbors in Orlando. And the person was a celebrity and lived in the neighborhood where the crash was. So I had a boss at one of my jobs hit me up and say, hey, can you give me that person's phone number? And I don't give people celebrities' phone numbers. It's something I would never do. And they wanted the phone number because they wanted to see if their Ring camera, or if their security cameras at their house had access to Tiger driving waste, or anything that had kind of gone on in that neighborhood. And I didn't want to get my friend involved, even though they're a celebrity. I don't want to put my friend in a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And the company, the boss was like, I know you have their phone number. Give me their phone number. And I said, I didn't have their phone number. And they said, are you telling me you don't have this person's phone number? And I said, I don't have this person's phone number, even though I did, but I refused to give up this person's phone number. And that was the first thing that like the boss really started to come down on me for, and like our relationship started to change because I refused to give that phone number. Because again, my friend had nothing to do with it. They're a big celebrity. It could only bring them harm.
Yeah.
And they didn't have anything to do with it. But I just, for me personally, I know that's nothing to do with the story, but I just remember what came from that story. And
Little PTSD from Tiger Woods.
It really is. But the story itself, the Tiger Woods, I mean, there were so many layers there, but I also thought it was a very relatable story where people could understand the story.
What part of that story was relatable to you?
No, it was just easy to understand. Tiger was with multiple women. One of them was Rachel Yucatel, who we had on the podcast. His wife, or ex-wife now, Ellen, knew about it, came out, broke the window of his SUV with a golf club, dragged her husband on the street. And then, I mean, it was just, we got all the details right away.
Yeah. Now, I think one...
It was so violent too. There was no,
but it wasn't even just that. It was the fact that
we also found out that night that Tiger Woods was taking Vicodin as painkillers.
Yeah,
like he might have been abusing him.
That got crazy too. But I think it was like not that it was just like one mistress, but then it was like, oh, another woman has come forward. Oh, now another woman. I mean, we got up to 15 women who came forward during that whole scandal, dude. Like, it was just one after another, after another, after another. And I think that's where it was so bizarre that you're like, I couldn't even make this up. It is so out of control. And remember, the 15th mistress was like literally the daughter of the next door neighbor that he had met when she was 14 years old. So it's just, it was, I don't know. There was so many twists and turns to the Tiger Woods story that, again, I think about the day that I heard and I was like, this can't be true, to today where I think, oh yeah, this man confessed to sleeping with 120 women. And I was so naive back then not to even believe it.
He pretty much he did. He admitted to it. So I think that's from a guy who is such a clean cut image in the sport of golf, which is known as a wealthy sport. You didn't think a scandal like this could come from it. And essentially, when we look back, it might have been the thing that kind of just changed the trajectory of his whole career.
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt in that. He still would have been the biggest star on the planet, and it derailed all of that for him. And I think it really goes back to, you think you know someone, but you really don't. Like, and I think you think their reputation that they've built up over time is like who they are, and a lot of times that's not the case.
The girls he was with, they became stars. I know two of them. I don't want to I wasn't with them, but I know I'm friends with two of them, and we only know about, I would say, 15, 20 of them. There's probably more there that we just never even heard her side either. Ellie, whatever her name is. We just never heard Elin. We never heard her side, where if she even knew a little bit of it, or if she just took complete, that was part of the agreement.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that does happen. Let's be real. That does happen in showbiz and sometimes the world, where this is the relationship.
Not even show. I feel like it happens more in sports, like basketball players and stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like it is a don't ask, don't tell, don't embarrass me type situation. At least what I've heard from a lot of people is like, when you're on the road, do what you need to do, but don't do it publicly.
Don't embarrass me.
And don't embarrass me. And
yeah.
This is the life that we have agreed to live, which is something I can't relate to, but if that works for them, it works for them.
Dax, do you remember with this story, do you remember where you were when this story kind of broke?
I'm trying to think of the very first one, the Inquirer run. I believe that I was at TMZ, but it was early in the morning. Like when I got to work, I would have to go through all the stories from the night before and like what's breaking, what's happening. And that's where I was like sitting at my desk reading about this. I think someone sent it out. It was like, here's the story. Here's the big story of the morning. And I'm like, what? But then I was a part of the second half of it, which was the car crash. Like that to me was the Thanksgiving day, or right before Thanksgiving day, where I was at my mom's house and we were sitting down to eat Thanksgiving dinner. and I got the call being like, hey, there's photos of this car crash that just happened, where Tiger was involved with his wife inside his community. And so I was a part of buying all those photos for TMZ of the car crash. So I was directly involved in the second one, but not the first one was a National Enquirer thing.
Were the neighbors? Were you buying photos from the neighbors? Or
I don't know who it was. I don't remember. I just remember someone had photos of the accident.
What's another story that really shocked you, that blew you away?
I think Mel Gibson. I think this whole anti-Semitic tirade on the side of PCH. I was at TMZ during the time when we broke that story. But again, it was one of those, Mel Gibson, to me, I had grown up with watching all these amazing Mel Gibson movies, and to be like sitting in the newsroom hearing, this story and how it was unfolding, and him calling the cops sugar tits and like all these things. And I'm like, what? Like, it was almost so surreal you couldn't believe it again. And the way this one really came out was he was arrested. He was booked for DUI. And then the cops had basically put out a statement saying, oh, no, all was good. He was booked, and no issue, no incident happened. And then, I don't remember if it was Harvey or someone else got tipped off that wasn't what had happened, that there was so much more to this story that the Malibu police were hiding for him. And we're like, what? And so they started digging into it.
So how did you hear? Wait, first of all, so stop right there. How did you guys hear that the Malibu police? Because this was essentially one of the first stories that really put TMZ on the map. Like, start to really get some gas behind them, because we were starting to see, like, hey, the police were hiding information.
Yeah.
Do you know how they find that stuff?
I don't remember. I mean, and obviously I couldn't reveal a source anyway, but I don't remember how it all unfolded. It was so long ago. I was so green in the industry because it was back in 2006. I mean, I had literally just started at TMZ back then. But I remember us getting more information saying, hey, what they're telling you is not the truth. There is a bunch of redacted information that you guys need to find out about. And once that information came forward, it was so shocking. So it said basically in the redacted part that once he was inside the car, he began banging himself to the seat. The report said that he was telling the deputy, you motherfucker, I'm going to fuck you. The report also says Gibson almost continually threatened her, saying he owns Malibu. He will spend all of his money to get even with her. Then launched into the whole anti-Semitic statement saying, fucking Jews. The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. And then he asked her if she was a Jew. And I guess this was like freaking her out because this was escalating so much. And then he said, what the fuck do you think you're going to do? A law enforcement source then told Gibson, then noticed another female sergeant yelled, what do you think you're looking at, sugar tits? I mean, he just went crazy that night. And I remember it was at 2 in the morning. And then he was given a breathalyzer test, and it was 0.12%, and was booked going 85 miles an hour down the street. And again, all these things are just like, what? This is so uncharacteristic for Mel Gibson. But as you unfold it over time, you realize it's not uncharacteristic. It's who he was. He was just better at hiding it for so long.
And what, his dad was a big anti-Semite type guy. Didn't we learn that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were many more things that came forward over time where he has not been a fan of Jews and Jews in Hollywood and all of that, which is crazy because I feel like him being such a big deal in Hollywood, those are the people that help making his movies, know, it's crazy. So I don't know, that story was wild. And then if you remember, it kept spiraling. He was with Oksana Gorieva, and remember he threatened to bury her in the rose garden, punch out her teeth and all this stuff. And again, you look at someone one way and you realize that's not who they really are. Yeah.
It's funny because you could see Mel Gibson. He goes to UFC events, and when he goes to UFC events, they always put this celebrities on the big screen, or they'll kind of shout him out on the TV production about which celebrities are there. and they'll say, "Oh, look who's here! We have David Beckham in the crowd," and then you see in the corner there's Mel Gibson, and they never address Mel Gibson anymore if he's ever there.
Yeah, because he's shunned, but yet he's still made movies after all of this.
Well, I
It's just
mean, was there
different
any
now.
huge movies?
Well, was Passion of the Christ after all this,
I
or was it
think
before?
I think it was before. I believe it was before.
Let me see. Let
So
me do a little Googling. I know he did that weird beaver movie, Passion of the Christ. What year was? 2004. So yeah, it was right before all this.
I think it was just
I don't know
because
if he's
Mel
done anything
Gibson
else
was the
big.
biggest star in the world. I mean,
Mhm.
not the biggest star, but he was A-list. There's celebrities and there's A-list. There's A-list and there's movie stars. Mel Gibson was a movie star, and just like that, everything
Crumbled.
crumbled.
Okay, talk about everything crumbling. Moving on from Mel Gibson, what about Mark Sailing? When that
Mark
story broke,
Sailing.
Mark Sailing, who was one of the biggest stars of Glee, and then gets caught and pleads guilty to possession of child pornography involving a prepubescent minor during an in-person court appearance that he had. And then he had to register as a sex offender, undergo treatment, pay $50,000 in restitution to each of his victims as part of that plea deal. But this is a dude who, again, seemingly has this amazing life. He's on top of the world. He's on this huge hit show, made a ton of money. He's a good-looking dude. And then you're like, what? He's looking at kiddie porn? Like,
Yeah.
what? And unbelievable story.
Well, that wasn't the first thing that happened with him. He was also accused of committing sexual battery, and this was back in 2000. I guess he was accused of committing sexual battery in 2011, but in January 2013, I guess the ex-girlfriend came out and he denied the charges and he filed a countersuit for defamation of character. In the end, Mark and the girl settled and he agreed to pay her $2.7 million,
Okay,
which is a lot of money for a Glee star.
Again, that to me, like, people do dumb shit, right? People do dumb shit. We've seen it over and over again where you put hands on someone, you get in trouble, but kiddie porn is on another level.
Oh, I 1000% agree. I mean, that's not even a question. He committed suicide. He hung himself, and back in 2018, they found his body at least like 6 hours after it was missing. I guess someone, they said they found it near his home. So
because
he didn't do it at his home. He did it near his home. So they found a guy hanging.
Yeah, because you know why? The world doesn't take kindly to people when it involves children. Like, you go to prison for that, you're going to get beat up every single day. You cannot walk down the street once you've pled guilty to child porn. I'm sorry, but there's no coming back. And I think he knew that. And he was like, I just need to go, is my assumption.
Well, I mean, so let me ask you this. I guess because the child porn, that's what made it really intense. But Glee also had another death that I think caught us all by.
You're talking about Corey?
Yeah, Corey. I mean, that's two major stars of the show who, one actually was suicide. The other one was, substance abuse. So I just remember when Corey died, and Corey had a relationship with Leah Michelle. And I think we're just like, whoa.
Oh, and by the way, let's not forget Naya Rivera too.
And Naya Rivera.
Like, that show was legit cursed, man.
Naya Rivera, she drowned in a lake, if I remember. She had it was her and her son. They had they had like a pontoon boat. Is that what you call it? Like those little easy boats. And she drowned in a lake. But Corey, I think we didn't know that they found him in a hotel in Vancouver. And it's just that they just found, who knew, like a guy like that looked like he had it all together. He was always like he was the all-American guy. He was also like, he was into like charities. He was big for LGBT rights. Dies from drugs.
Well, you could say the same for Heath Ledger. Looked like he had his he had everything together, but had a lethal combination, some drugs that he went to bed with, and boom, gone. But yeah, I think Mark, Corey, these are guys that seemingly are on top of the world, seem like they got their shit together, and next thing you know, you're doing a story that you're like, I can't believe I'm talking about this right now. There's no way I would have ever predicted this in my life.
I mean, yeah. I mean, is there a death recently that really shocked you? I know Bob Barker just died.
I'm not shocked by Bob Barker. He was 99 years old.
But you know what? Jimmy Buffett shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy was 78 years old or 76 years old. I'm sorry. Skin cancer. He had, well, it wasn't just from skin cancer. He had, was it melanoma or whatever it is from skin cancer. Mm-hmm. But Jimmy Buffett was one of those guys where he hid what he was going through pretty well. And I think from the last week of his life, we're hearing about that he, was starting to tell people about what was going on. But I mean, again, I was shocked by Jimmy Buffett. I just thought that guy was still at 78, still living like a king. But I mean, that could be a whole thing in itself about shocking deaths, because I think, a lot of these deaths we're always shocked by. Dax, is there another story that kind of blows you away?
I was thinking back to Kim and Chris Humphries when their wedding took over the entire world for months and months and months. And I was at TMZ at the time. So it was just like every day there needed to be a new story about them, about their wedding, about, details coming out from their wedding. And so the shocking part came 72 days after marriage when she filed for divorce. And it was on October 31st, back in 2011. The filing came out. She cited irreconcilable differences, requested that neither of them have spousal support. And basically, she put out a statement saying, I had hoped this marriage was forever, but sometimes things don't work out as planned. And I remember when Us Weekly put out that statement, I was like, wait, what? Because they hadn't played the show. You had, obviously, when they're filming Keeping Up with the Kardashians, you saw that there was issues between the two of them. But that season hadn't played out, so you didn't know how bad things were. It was like you go from this, they're a huge marriage, everyone's talking about it, it's the next big marriage around the world, to she filed for divorce. And again, it came out and you're like, there's no way. Something has to be wrong. There's no way she just filed for divorce. I do not believe it for 1 second. That's not possible that they are already divorcing. And then it was true.
I will give Chris Humphries a lot of credit. And I don't know if this is legal, so for legality reasons, he can't speak. But he hasn't played basketball since, I guess he stopped playing basketball in 2017. He officially retired in 2019. And it's funny, I was at a club maybe a little less than a year ago. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I was at a club and I saw him at the club. And no one else is realizing, or is still, maybe I'm just the old guy at the club, this guy was actually married to Kim Kardashian. And we never heard his side. He never really spoke about the divorce, and neither did Kim. Mm-hmm. And that could have been in the document saying, hey, you can't ever speak about it. Because again, because of the length of that marriage, people wondered if this was a publicity stunt orchestrated by E! Entertainment, Kris Jenner, Kim Kardashian, to promote Kim and the Kardashians. So we never really heard his side of that relationship.
Didn't he speak on his sister's podcast at one point? Just mentioned it? I feel like that sounds familiar in my head, but I don't remember.
Check on that. But he hasn't really... Listen, the guy Kim Kardashian is one of the biggest people in the world. He could do very well speaking about that relationship. Mm-hmm. And he never really went crazy speaking about that marriage or what went on during that wild 2 months of everything that was going on. I guess he got married to her in 2000. They began dating in 2010, engaged in 2011, and they got divorced
in 2011. Yeah, it was so fast. The whole thing was like a whirlwind.
We're talking about 13 years ago that happened. But yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Sorry, I'm going to move on because I thought of a story that's even crazier than that one. Yes, their divorce was crazy, but you know which one really blew my mind? That again, it took numerous stories for me to actually even believe it was possibly true.
All right, hold
Was
on. Give me. Hold on. Don't tell me yet. Is it a divorce?
no.
Okay, I was gonna guess if it was a divorce. Can you give me roughly the storyline? I could guess what one blew you away.
Well, the second I say any part of it, you're going to guess it. But
Okay.
it was a hoax. A racially stimulated hoax, if that makes any sense.
I'm bad at these blind item things. What was a racially stimulated? Oh, are we talking about the guy, the Trump guy, the Jesse?
Yes, Jussie Smollett.
Jussie Smollett. Yeah.
That, to me, again, every detail of that story. Okay, so when people ask me, what's the craziest story you've ever been a part of? That happened. That has to be in my top 5. Because
the crazy part is Jussie still stands by his whole thing. He's like, nope.
Can't make that shit up. It is so weird. Like, for him to say that he was basically a part of the victim of a hate crime, to then, like, in the world, do you remember the world, like, came around him and, like, embraced him and said, like, we're here for you, to then find out that he fucking played a trick on all of us and it was basically a giant hoax, and that he ended up having to, after he was sentenced, he had to spend 30 months of felony probation, 150 days in jail, in order to pay $120,000 in restitution and $25,000 in a fine for making false reports to the police that he was the victim of that crime. I mean,
yeah.
What? Like, what? It just, how quickly that script changed on him, where, like I said, he had garnished so much, like, sympathy, and then people don't want to be tricked in that regards. Like, we just gave you our sympathy, and now we're finding out it was for no reason other than, I don't know if you wanted to have a bigger name in Hollywood. I don't even remember, like, what the point of that was, if it was just to get his name out there bigger or what. But that shit was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the funnier part about this is Jussie Smollett still, even that it went to court and he was found guilty, he still stands by his, oh no, I was attacked. And I think the funniest part of this, how did they start to question right away that this was,
because none of it made sense. They were watching the like the CTV
cameras, and the guys were together.
It didn't make sense. Remember, they talked to the two brothers or the twins or whatever they were, and they basically ended up confessing that, yeah, we were paid by Jussie. We didn't actually do it. So it all started to kind of steamroll to, oh shit, this was a big hoax.
They found him with rope around his neck. Like, they're like, why didn't you take the rope off your neck?
That's
like,
right. That is right.
Why'd you keep walking with rope around your neck?
He literally the police went to his apartment and they opened the door and he still had it around his neck, and they were like, you wouldn't take that off? Like, you're just wearing it like it's a necklace now? Like, everything was just done in a very poor fashion.
But I think the funniest part is like, that shows you what kind of actor he is, or how bad of an actor he is, that when he walked in the police precinct, even though someone in that police precinct knew who he was, they were like, yeah, this is not true. This gotta be something weird. Like, why are you still wearing the rope around your neck?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's a fun one. That's a fun one. And it's crazy. We're saying the word crazy a lot, but it's true. That, to me, that's just a wild story, that what people do to use the tabloids for their own career and show business. And I wonder, I think some of the other cast members of that show that he was on still stood by him, but
no, most people, they did at the beginning, and then it was like,
then they distance themselves.
They're like, back up. Don't be around. Don't be associated with him anymore.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else is, when someone asks me craziest story. So obviously Jussie's in there. I mean, we got to talk probably Meghan and Harry, right? Like, would anyone believe that they exited the royal family?
When they left the royal family, I think we were all shocked. I think we were all shocked, of all people, especially here in America, that it was an American celebrity that, and it wasn't like a big celebrity. She was an actress. And actually, I'm rewatching Suits right now. I'm not rewatching. I'm watching for the first time Suits. That it's an older show, I guess. And I really enjoy the show. But like, whoa, that girl that was a small, like a decent sized role, but smaller role on Suits is marrying a prince. And now they're gonna leave the castle. Yeah, looking now that I'm watching Suits, to me even blows my mind more.
Well, and if you remember back when they first, like when they got married, obviously that wedding was ridiculous. And then they went on their like tour through like Australia, and they just seemed like they were a breath of fresh air to the royal family at that time. And how quickly that switched from being this breath of fresh air to being like the tarnished part of the royal family, and then being like, I don't want to say kicked out, because they made it seem like it was their choice to leave. You know, they confirmed Her Majesty they would not be returning as working royal members of the family. And then, okay, now they're getting up and they're leaving and they're going to Canada. Now they're moving to California. So it was all very much on them. But again, if you were to ask me, you know, back in 2019 or 2020, whenever the hell they got married, if I thought that we would be where we're at right now, wouldn't have believed you. I would have been like, nope, these two are changing the royal family. We're all embracing the royal family even more. We're liking them even more because it's just different. It's a different vibe. And then it just was like,
you just got to think of the people that Meghan Markle might have been hanging out with in her circle, like who she was hanging out with. Now, she met the Prince Harry through, I guess, one of Harry's childhood friends.
Mm-hmm.
And she was kind of working herself in Hollywood, trying to, you know, you become part of your network. And she was trying to hang in that circle of very successful people. And all of a sudden, here she is as I wouldn't say a struggling actress, but I'd say a working actress, but not a star by any means. And now the people, because she left the castle and obviously married Prince Harry, now she's dealing with Oprah. She's dealing with Tyler Perry. She's got her network is just insane now.
Mm-hmm.
The people that she's with, like talking about a girl who worked the system and moved her ways and finessed her way in Hollywood, like it's pretty incredible. And then obviously them leaving the castle, and she was a big part of that. You have to imagine she would be in his ear, or maybe he was already said, "I'm already checked out." But
yeah,
I mean, this brings into
decision on their part. But
this story didn't shock me that much, though, Dax, because I only became more involved or knowledgeable, I guess, of what happened with
like post when they were already kind of on their way out.
Yeah. So then I learned how big the king and queen are back there. So like that's how this story kind of became. So it didn't hit me as hard, but now when I look back at it now, because I'm watching Suits, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
What's something else? Let's see. By the way, my phone's going off right now. Do you hear those dings?
Yes. I'm like, shut the phone off, bro. What's going on?
I'm getting text messages from a guy who's at a suite at the U.S. Open. If you've been following, Daily Mail the past 2 weeks, you've been seeing all the celebrities going to the U.S. Open. Well, in the suite is Naomi Campbell, and he's like, dude, guess who's in my suite? Is Naomi Campbell. My friend is the U.S. Open paparazzi, and he's at the U.S. Open just to shoot all the celebrities there, which kind of boosts up the attention of the tournament. And so I'm going to have my buddy who's shooting it shoot the suite in Naomi Campbell, but my buddy's going to try to do what I do and sneak in the background of the photos. So, and again, the guy who bought the suite must have paid, I don't know, I'm going to guess maybe around $35K minimum for the suite. So it's a good guy to help out because he wants the attention. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. What's another story?
I'll tell you one that I remember exactly where I was when I found out about it. Kristen Stewart cheating on Robert Pattinson. I remember.
First, who'd she cheat on him with?
With Rupert Sanders. It was the director of Snow White the Huntsman and the Huntsman. She had been filming the movie with whatever. But I remember sitting at my desk at TMZ, getting a call from a paparazzi and saying, I have photos for you to look at. We're selling them exclusively. Are you interested? And I remember, obviously, they were all watermarked and all that kind of stuff, and getting the photos. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the biggest story like ever right now. And you got to remember, Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart were the two biggest stars on the entire planet.
It's back in 2009.
All of the Twilight stuff. Like when Twilight was huge, there was no stars bigger than them. And then their love story was also, it eclipsed all of it. And it was like, everyone was talking about it. All these kids around the world wanted to know every little thing. So to then get photos in my lap of her making out with Rupert on the side of the road up in the Hollywood Hills. Like I remember, like their car was parked, but they got out of it and they were literally just in the hills somewhere. And they were like leaning up against the guardrail, just making out. And I'm like, am I really looking at this right now? Like, is this possible that she is cheating on Robert Pattinson with the director of the movie? Like, there's no way. Keep in mind, he was married at the time. So both of them were cheating on their loved ones. And I remember at the time, I don't think we bought the exclusive. I want to say someone paid a shit ton of money. Maybe it was Us Weekly. I think Us Weekly ended up buying the exclusive, putting it up. We had to wait to we could talk about, the whole thing, but we couldn't show the photos for maybe like a day or two while that exclusive went out. But that like broke the internet right there, those photos.
Let me ask you, Dax, when a paparazzi says, I want to say the photos, what makes you guys not run the story without the photos? So like, hey, fuck it, we just got a story. We don't need to use your photos. We say, hey, Kristen Stewart is having an affair with Rupert Sanders.
Rupert Sanders,
sorry.
No, you have to kind of find a new angle, like, because
yeah, but you guys could break the story that
paparazzi just won't. Yeah, they just won't come back to you with stories next time. Then, if you just steal the story and put it up without
a lot.
It does happen a lot. But
and we know you're an ex-company that we worked with.
But I do feel like there were many times where stories would come to us, and if you don't buy it, you can't run the story, and that's kind of, it's got to be an integrity thing, honestly, because that company or that person will not come back to you next time if you burn them.
But I don't trust I don't trust that company.
So
yeah,
I mean, I did a lot because I was in charge of the photo department. There would be things that would land on my desk, and I would make it very clear that if we don't want to buy it, we don't get to run it. And it just, you wouldn't run it unless you came up with a different angle. So once it breaks, I would say once it breaks, then it's kind of fair game, right? Like the second that Us Weekly were to post those photos, okay, now you can do a story, and you can even point back to Us Weekly and say, Us Weekly, who got the first photos of the two of them kissing, blah, 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 blah. Now you do the whole story on it.
Looking back at this story, this was the best thing to ever happen to Robert Pattinson, possibly.
I think no.
And Kristen, too, because...
No. I think this was the best thing to happen to Liberty Ross. Liberty Ross, who was Rupert Sanders' wife at the time, they obviously went through a divorce. I think that divorce was pretty smooth, but she ended up starting to date Jimmy Iovine after that. Billionaire Jimmy Iovine. She ended up getting married to Jimmy Iovine, who was, 10 pay grades higher than Rupert Sanders, and she got herself into a whole different category and living a great life. And so I think that this whole thing, the best thing to happen to Liberty Ross. She won out in all of this.
But Robert Pattinson wound up ending, now he's been with Suki Waterhouse, who is a good-looking woman. So good for him. Again, they weren't going to get married, so it was a good rip of the Band-Aid. But yes, you're right. Because Twilight was so big, I don't even know how to compare. Like, obviously, I think our audience is roughly our age, so they know how big Twilight is. But have you ever seen a movie as big as Twilight that took over the world like that? A franchise.
I mean, the only other ones I could compare to are like Endgame and stuff, and like the Marvel movies, but it's different because it's not a love story where it's centered around two people. Like the Marvel movies, there's so many main characters that it's not like it's on two people, whereas that was three people. It was Robert, Kristen, and what's his face, Taylor Lautner. Like those were the stars of that movie. Anyway, that story was wild.
Well, they were America, even though they were just America's new it couple.
Mm-hmm. And they were young and attractive and all
to
of
end
that.
like that, co-stars, and to end like that was like, what?
But I do feel like this also derailed Kristen's career a bit, because if you remember,
she was a villain.
The year she put out Huntsman, the Snow White movie, she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood. She had done Twilight and Snow White, and she was making crazy amounts of money. And then after that, it kind of tarnished her reputation, and she wasn't getting booked for the movies. Like, what was the last Kristen Stewart movie?
No, I couldn't even tell you. Was it the one where she played the rocker? I couldn't even tell you. I don't even guess, but I'm sure she has worked since.
No, I know she's worked.
Yeah, but nothing memorable. Nothing where you're like, oh my god.
Nothing as big as the Twilight franchises.
Oh, by the way,
Snow White.
Have you seen the new Adam?
Oh, she did Spencer. I'm such an idiot. She did Spencer, where she was literally nominated for an Oscar.
Okay, all right. Well, we take that back. Again, not my kind of movie.
I didn't watch it.
By the way, totally off subject. Do you see the new Adam Sandler Bat Mitzvah movie?
I've seen previews for it. I really want to watch it. It looks really good.
That seems fun. I don't know why I just thought of that. What is it? All right, give me one more story, Dax.
Are we doing like last one?
Yeah, give me one more. I think this is like a.
Well, I gotta give two. One, we're gonna give a mention, and then the last one I think is one that we've mentioned numerous times that we still need to mention in this rundown. But I think the cheating scandal with Sandra Bullock and Jesse James was also one of those stories where when it came out, I'm like, there's no goddamn way Jesse James is cheating on Sandra motherfucking Bullock. Like, did not think it was possible. And then when you saw the woman he was cheating on her with, I'm like, she was such a complete opposite of who Sandra Bullock is. You know, it was Michelle Bombshell McGee, who just was covered. When I say from face to feet with tattoos, that's like literally on her face, on her arms, on her leg, like everywhere. And I'm like, what? Like, he cheated on her with her? Wait, what's happening right now? So I think that story, and it was like fresh after her winning an Oscar. So she was also like the biggest name in Hollywood at the time. And then to find out her husband was cheating on her was wild. So I just wanted to mention that one. But I think the biggest story of all time that I always mention when people ask me is Caitlyn Jenner's transition.
Why that story?
Because
so what resonates with that story with you? Were you working at TMZ at the time, or?
I was at TMZ at the time, and not believing the stories that were breaking out of National Enquirer. The stories about Bruce having dresses, the stories about the Adam's apple surgery, getting the Adam's apple removed. Again, numerous stories had come out week after week after week that, even though they were all kind of within the same line, I didn't believe them because I just felt like the Kardashians and the Jenners were such a focal point for everyone and a target, and no matter what they did, it was scrutinized for everything. And so I just thought, oh, this is another made up bullcrap story to just be aimed at the Kardashian Jenner family to make them look bad or whatever. And it felt so far-fetched from what I knew of Bruce at the time, and couldn't fathom that was, he always seemed like this manly man out, riding his motorcycles and this and that, and the head, that the patriarch of the family. It just was so crazy to me that I couldn't believe it. And over the months and months and months, I'm like, holy shit, this is real.
But did it seem fake, or you couldn't really believe it was real because it was the Kardashians and behind it?
I think that's a part of it too. But uh, hearing the patriarch of the family transitioning genders, like, I'm sure this happens around the country with certain families, you know what I'm saying? But like, to be a family in front of the spotlight and for this to be, transpiring in front of our eyes, I didn't believe it. And I'm telling you, every story that came out, I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Like, I remember posting on social media, just being like, this is the dumbest story I've heard all day. Like, give me a break. And then I had to eat my words like 6 months later.
Yeah. It was that photo. I just remember, I think Caitlyn was, well, at the time it was Bruce, I think, was after they got the Adam's apple removed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like, wait, what?
But again, it was like, is it really, or is this just Bruce walking out of a medical facility with like a bandage around his neck at the time? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Are they making it into more than it really is? Did he have a lump on his throat? Like, and again, I'm not being disrespectful towards Caitlyn. I'm speaking about Bruce because at that time, he was Bruce.
Do you think Caitlyn still looks back at that time and understands how crazy it is for people to see about that transition? And listen, I'm glad that she's happy.
Yeah, I think for
at
her,
the end of the day, like, I think for us to be like, wow, this was the most athletic. Bruce was at one time was the most athletic man in the world,
mm-hmm.
and essentially an alpha male for a little bit, and then to hear what we found out later how upset Bruce was being in male clothes, and then
mm-hmm.
I wonder if Caitlyn looks back and says, "Man, I could understand where people, not that they couldn't come to terms with it, but how they were just like baffled by this, how they blew him away."
I'm sure she knows how baffling it can be, and I'm glad she can live her own truth at this point. And because it's probably hard for an average person that isn't famous to come out and tell their family something about them like this, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to do something like that. But think how much it takes to be a public figure and come out and acknowledge and admit this to the world, and then go through your transition on a very public platform. I think she knew this is going to be tough. This is going to be the toughest thing I've ever had to do in my life. But there's also going to be a lot of people out there that are inspired by this and can now live their truth, or give them the courage to tell their family or whatever. So I think she knew the power of what she was doing.
Yeah. With that said, I think we got to do part 2 about this, because it's kind of bring me like to one of those things to think back about these wild times in the last, I don't know, 2-3 decades. Some of these stories, but I appreciate you guys watching. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening, thank you for listening. Make sure you guys leave a review. It's the best thing to do to sports podcast. Follow us, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We have a private Facebook group called Off the Record, which you guys should join. It's a really, really good group. Follow me at Adam Glyn. Follow Dax Holt at Dax Holt. We should do a part 2 on this, because there's so many other stories that kind of, it's just one of those things. It really takes your breath away. Like the Jussie Smollett thing, like, man. After all these stories, I'm like, damn. Yeah. It's a wild thing. But we'll do another one. All right, Dax, thank you, guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
What's up, guys? If you like that video, there's plenty more that came from.
Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, so we can just feed you all the goodness daily.
Hurry up. Come on, let's go.